Blue Origin just unveiled their upgraded New Glenn 9x4, 9BE4 engines, over 70 tons to orbit, an 8.7-meter fairing that rivals Starship's size. On paper, it looks like Jeff Bezos finally has a real competitor. But here's what Elon Musk knows that changes everything. While Blue Origin spent years perfecting one rocket, SpaceX launched, failed, learned, and iterated hundreds of times. The gap isn't just about engines or payload capacity anymore. So, what's the real reason Blue Origin can't catch up, no matter how much money Jeff throws at the problem? Let's talk about what actually happened behind closed doors. Just 1 week after New Glenn's second successful launch, Blue Origin dropped something nobody saw coming: the New Glenn 9x4. Not an incremental update, a complete power surge that changes everything they've been building. 9 BE4 engines on the first stage instead of 7, 4 BE3U engines on the upper stage instead of 2. The thrust numbers tell a story Blue Origin has been hiding for years. Each BE4 now pushes 640,000 pounds of thrust, up from 550,000. The BE3U engines jump from 320,000 to 400,000 pounds. But here's what those numbers really mean: over 70 tons to low Earth orbit, more than 20 tons to lunar transfer orbit, around 14 tons straight to geostationary orbit. Blue Origin just entered the heavyweight championship of space launch. And they're not stopping there. The payload fairing grows to 8.7 meters, making it one of the most spacious commercial rockets ever built. That's almost as wide as Starship's 9-meter fairing. For the first time, satellite operators have a real alternative when SpaceX says the price is too high or the schedule is too tight. Competition just became real. But there's something Elon Musk spotted immediately that most people missed. Want to know what it is? The devil lives in the engine room. Blue Origin's BE4 uses an oxidizer-rich staged combustion cycle. It's proven. It's reliable. It's also fundamentally limited by physics. The engine runs one preburner, pushes oxidizer through at extreme pressure, and hopes the seals hold. Combustion pressure maxes out around 140 bar. That's the ceiling. Now look at what SpaceX built. The Raptor uses full-flow staged combustion. 2 preburners, one fuel-rich and one oxidizer-rich, working in perfect harmony. Every drop of propellant gets burned completely before entering the main chamber. The result? Combustion pressure hits 350 bar, more than double the BE4. The thrust-to-weight ratio tells an even more brutal story. BE4 achieves roughly 80 to 1. Raptor 2 crushes it at over 140 to 1. Even with Blue Origin's upgrades pushing BE4 thrust to 640,000 pounds, getting close to Raptor's 660,000, the gap in fundamental efficiency remains massive. And here's where the math becomes devastating. Starship's first stage mounts 33 Raptor engines. New Glenn 9x4 will have just 9 BE4s. The total power difference isn't linear, it's exponential. So why didn't Blue Origin choose full-flow staged combustion from the start? The honest answer reveals everything about how these two companies think. SpaceX chose the harder path, knowing they'd fail, learn, and iterate faster than anyone else. Blue Origin chose the safer path, perfecting what already worked. One company treated failure as data. The other treated it as something to avoid at all costs. The reusability question cuts even deeper. Blue Origin proudly announces that New Glenn 9x4's first stage and fairing will both be reusable. That's genuinely impressive engineering. Refurbishment time drops significantly thanks to upgraded heat shields and lessons learned from the 7x2 variant. Launch costs could fall below $220 million per flight, roughly 1/10 of NASA's SLS price tag. But Starship? Fully reusable. Both stages, the Super Heavy booster and the Starship spacecraft, return to Earth, get refueled, and fly again. SpaceX isn't aiming for $220 million per launch. They're targeting under $10 million. That's not a typo. When you can reuse everything and turn around a rocket in days instead of months, the economics shift from affordable to revolutionary. Here's what that means in practice. Blue Origin might launch New Glenn 9x4 12 times a year if everything goes perfectly. SpaceX is already preparing for hundreds of Starship launches annually. Volume changes everything. The learning curve accelerates. Manufacturing costs plummet. Reliability improves. The gap doesn't close, it widens. And this is where Elon's brutal truth becomes undeniable. Blue Origin spent over 2 decades building their culture around caution and precision. Meanwhile, SpaceX blew up rockets in Texas, learned what broke, fixed it in weeks, and blew up another one to learn something new. By the time Blue Origin perfected their BE-4 engine, SpaceX had already moved past Raptor 2 and was testing Raptor 3. The leadership change tells you everything about what Jeff Bezos finally understood. When he brought in Dave Limp from Amazon in late 2023, it wasn't just a personnel move. It was an admission that Blue Origin's culture needed emergency surgery. Under former CEO Bob Smith, the company had money, talent, and ambition. What it lacked was urgency. Limp brought Amazon's obsession with scaling fast and smart. Instead of crafting a handful of experimental rockets, Blue Origin now focuses on building volume manufacturing capacity. The goal isn't perfection on launch day, it's rapid iteration, tight timelines, and accountability at every level. In less than 2 years, the transformation shows. New Glenn launched successfully. New Glenn 9x4 got announced. The production line is expanding. But here's the problem nobody at Blue Origin wants to admit. While they were building their culture of speed, SpaceX was already operating at that speed for 15 years. The Falcon 9 has flown over 400 times. Boosters have landed over 300 times. Some individual boosters have flown more than 20 missions each. That's not innovation anymore. That's industrial-scale spaceflight. When Blue Origin finally launches New Glenn 9x4 in a few years, how many times will Starship have flown by then? 50 times? 100? How much will they have learned about full reusability, rapid turnaround, and orbital refueling? The technology gap might actually be wider in 2027 than it is right now. And there's something even more fundamental that Elon understood from day one. SpaceX didn't build Falcon 9 to compete with existing rockets. They built it to make their real goal possible, Mars. Every success, every failure, every recovered booster was practice for Starship. Blue Origin built New Shepard for space tourism. They built New Glenn for commercial launches. Both are fine businesses. Neither is Mars. The mission clarity creates completely different decision-making. When SpaceX needs to choose between safe and fast, they choose fast because Mars won't wait. When they need to choose between proven and revolutionary, they choose revolutionary because incremental improvements won't get humans to another planet. Blue Origin makes rational business decisions. SpaceX makes civilization-scale bets. Does that mean New Glenn 9x4 doesn't matter? Actually, it matters tremendously. The space industry needs competition. It needs alternatives. It needs customers to have choices beyond SpaceX or nothing. New Glenn brings heavy lift capability at a fraction of SLS costs. It provides redundancy when Falcon Heavy is booked solid. It pushes SpaceX to keep prices competitive and quality high. For satellite operators, lunar missions, and deep space probes, having 2 viable super heavy options is infinitely better than having one. The United States government certainly prefers not putting all their eggs in Elon's basket. European and Asian customers want alternatives that aren't dependent on one man's Twitter feed affecting their launch schedule. But competing with SpaceX and catching up to SpaceX are two different things. Blue Origin can compete in the commercial launch market. They can win contracts. They can build a sustainable business. What they probably can't do is close the gap in technology, cost, or capability before SpaceX opens an even bigger lead with whatever comes after Starship. The window was always narrow. Back in 2010, Blue Origin and SpaceX were roughly even in capability. Both had big dreams and limited hardware. By 2015, SpaceX had landed their first orbital booster, while Blue Origin was still flying suborbital hops. By 2020, SpaceX was reusing Falcon 9 boosters routinely, while New Glenn hadn't flown yet. By 2025, Starship is catching towers and planning lunar missions while New Glenn just got off the ground. Every year that passes, the gap requires not just catching up, but accelerating past SpaceX's current rate of improvement. That's not impossible, but it requires something Blue Origin hasn't shown yet: a willingness to fail publicly, learn brutally, and iterate faster than feels safe. So, what's the real reason Blue Origin can't compete at SpaceX's level? It's not money. Jeff Bezos has plenty. It's not talent. Blue Origin hires brilliant engineers. It's not even technology, though that gap is real and growing. The brutal truth, Elon knows, is simpler and harder to fix. Blue Origin spent 20 years learning how to build rockets carefully. SpaceX spent 20 years learning how to build a Mars program. One company optimized for success, the other optimized for learning. And in a race where the technology keeps evolving, the fastest learner wins every time. So here's the brutal truth. Blue Origin's New Glenn 9x4 is impressive engineering. 9 BE-4 engines, 70 tons to orbit, full first-stage reusability. On paper, it looks competitive. But the real gap isn't about hardware anymore. SpaceX spent 20 years learning through failure. They blew up rockets, learned fast, and iterated faster. Blue Origin spent 20 years avoiding failure, perfecting designs, moving carefully. By the time New Glenn 9x4 flies operationally, Starship will have flown hundreds of missions. The learning curve advantage is insurmountable. The message is clear. You can't buy 2 decades of hard-won experience. You can't hire your way past a culture gap. Blue Origin can compete in the launch market. What they can't do is catch SpaceX's pace of innovation. One company optimized for learning, the other optimized for perfection. In a race where technology evolves daily, the fastest learner always wins. That's why Elon Musk isn't worried. He knows Blue Origin is playing catch-up in a game where the rules keep changing faster than they can adapt. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Blue Origin can close this gap, or is the race already over? Drop your honest take in the comments below. If this analysis gave you clarity on the real space race dynamics, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to New Space Review and hit the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into what's actually happening beyond the headlines. Share this video with anyone who thinks money alone wins in space. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.